Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, I will be brief in moving this motion. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security and Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations. On the approval, on the report on the approval hearing of Mr. Douglas Kancha Kirocho, nominee for appointment to the position of Inspector General of the National Police Service, pursuant to Standing Order 2236 of the Senate Standing Orders. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you are aware, pursuant to a provision of Article 245(2)(a) of the Constitution, Section 12, Subsection 2 of the National Police Service Act, Cap 84, and Section 5 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approvals Act, Cap 7F, His Excellency the President submitted the name of Douglas Kancha Kirocho, CBS, OGW, as the nominee for appointment for the position of Inspector General of the National Police Service. Mr. Speaker, what follows thereafter is procedural issues. I will be privileged to mention, Mr. Speaker, that the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of Senate, via communication made on 1st of August 2024, conveyed the message from the President nominating Douglas Kancha Kirocho as the nominee for appointment to the position of Inspector General of the National Police Service. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of Senate revert the matter to the two committees to hold a joint approval hearing. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 6, Subsection 9 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approvals Act, the Clerk of the National Assembly and the Clerk of the Senate invited interested members of the public to submit any representations by written statements on oath, that is affidavits, with supporting defense evidence on the suitability of the nominee for appointment to the position of Inspector General. The invitations, Mr. Speaker, were made via advertisements which appeared in the National Daily Nation and the Standard newspapers on Saturday, 3rd of August 2024. Mr. Speaker, the notification was followed up by a letter to the nominee inviting him to attend the approval hearing and requesting him to submit the completed questionnaire set out in schedule to the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approvals Act, that is CAP 7F, together with the clearance certificates from the Office of the ODPP, ESEC, KRA, DCI, HELP, and CRB as required under the law. Mr. Speaker, further, the clerks also of the two houses wrote to ODPP, the same institutions, seeking reference and background checks relating to the suitability of the nominee. Mr. Speaker, these are all legal requirements that are mandatory. It is legal. It should be received as we vet the nominee. And Mr. Speaker, again, further clerks also of the two houses went forward now to receive these responses. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution, Section 6.3 of the Public Appointments, Standing Order 45.3 of the National Assembly, and Standing Order 77.2 of the Senate, Standing Orders, the clerks of the two houses, by way of advertisement, also Mr. Speaker, in the print media, notified the general public of the intention of the committee to conduct public approvals. Mr. Speaker, it is important for the public to know, and even for this House, that public participation is no longer an optional, it is mandatory also. And that is why the Constitution of the Republic and Article 118 comes to play here, so that we also get to know from the public what they think of a nominee, whether CS, whether PS, and even for the case of the IG. Mr. Speaker, the committee conducted approval hearings on 15th of August, that is Thursday. In conducting the approvals hearing, the committee were guided by the provisions of the Constitution, the Public Appointments, Parliamentary Approvals Act, the National Public Service, the National Police Public Service, the National Assembly Standing Orders, and the Senate Standing Orders. So, Mr. Speaker, those are the legal provisions that guided the committee, the joint committee, during the approval hearings. Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, because, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the report of this joint committee, it is well detailed. Every aspect of what transpired during the approval hearings, Mr. Speaker, are captured very well in this particular report, which is detailed. That is, Mr. Speaker, Chapter 3 of the report, from paragraph 36 all the way. If you want to know what transpired, the responses by the nominee is mindset on the issues that are pertinent in his leadership, if approved, are captured in Chapter 3 of the report. So in the interest of time, I would like just to request my colleagues, as you go through this, refer to Chapter 3, and you will see all what transpired. And I think I will stop at that. So I will, Mr. Speaker, go to committee's observations based on the approval hearings. Mr. Speaker, the committee observed that a total of 30 memorandums were received with regard to the suitability of the nominee. Mr. Speaker, memorandums from the public must fulfill certain requirements. It should be supported by an affidavit and the evidence. And that is something that is mandatory also. So out of the 30, two only fulfilled the requirements of the law. It had an affidavit in support and the evidence, Mr. Speaker. The issues raised in the two memorandums, Mr. Speaker, contesting the suitability of the nominee was sufficiently and satisfactorily addressed by the nominee and do not provide sufficient evidence to warrant the disqualification of the nominee for appointment to the position of IG. Again, Mr. Speaker, the full details of those issues raised by the two Kenyans are also contained. The complaints and the response by the nominee, and also the analysis by the committee as to whether those two complaints really can stop the nominee, the vetting of the nominee. Mr. Speaker, the other observation the committee also made is that the nominee fulfilled the provisions of Article 78, Sub-Article 1 and 2 of the Constitution for appointment, since he is a Kenyan citizen and does not hold a dual citizenship. That's a very, very critical point, Mr. Speaker. A person serving as an IG must not hold two citizenship, it should be only one in the country. And Mr. Speaker, that was also fulfilled. Another observation, Mr. Speaker, is that the nominee holds a degree and as required by the provisions of Section 11(1) and of the National Police Service Act for appointment as Inspector General. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that the National Police Service Act has most of the provisions as to the requirements, the qualifications of the nominee, and we were satisfied as a committee that, Mr. Speaker, under observation number 10D, he had that particular provision of a degree. The nominee meets the requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity, having obtained the clearance from the institutions I spoke about. That is EACC, you talk about KRA, and all the other institutions, Mr. Speaker. The committee was satisfied that indeed the nominee fulfills requirements of Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity. Mr. Speaker, the nominee demonstrated knowledge of topical, administrative, technical issues relating to governance and the requisite abilities, qualifications, experience to serve. Mr. Speaker, I participated in vetting the immediate former IG. And as we all do this, Mr. Speaker, this nominee promises heaven for the Kenyan people. Available, they will be available. They will be hands-on. They will be able to visit the ground. They will be able to respond. And Mr. Speaker, we took time as a committee to inquire from the nominee if indeed he will be one of those people who will just come and make some public pronouncements, which later, immediately appointed, they forget about. Mr. Speaker, this is the nominee rose from the ranks of a corporal, and he has served this country as a police officer, Mr. Speaker, for 39 years, rising through the ranks. Mr. Speaker, he has served in almost every part of the country, in various positions. Mr. Speaker, he assured the committee and the public that Mr. Speaker is going to ensure that he will fulfill the promises he gave to the committee. Mr. Speaker, there are about two issues I will just mention so that I stop. Mr. Speaker, the issue of North Rift, 7 counties, hosting 9 million Kenyans, suffering from cattle rustling. Mr. Speaker, I have moved a motion in this House, approved. It's now being implemented by the department concerned. And Mr. Speaker, the nominee was able to promise deployment, if approved by this House, deployment of enough NPR, the deployment of more security forces. He was able to address the issue of the extrajudicial killings, which Kenyans still feel it exists. But he affirmed to the committee, Mr. Speaker, that is something which is going to work on it. Mr. Speaker, issues concerning the robberies going on in our cities and so on. Matters, Mr. Speaker, regarding the welfare of the members, housing, insurance, and so on. So, Mr. Speaker, if because of time, I will refer members to the report because it has all those issues. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that based on the observations made, the committee recommends that the House approves that Mr. Douglas Kancha Kirocho, CBS, OGW, for appointment as the Inspector General of Police Service. Mr. Speaker, I want to end there and request my brother Mungatana to also briefly second this motion so that members will have a moment to debate before we go to the other matter before the House. So I want to request Mungatana to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move. I beg to move.
Senator Mungatana.
To thank the Honorable William Cheptumo, our Chairman for Internal Security Committee and Foreign Affairs, and Gabriel Tongoyo, his counterpart in the National Assembly, for the good work they have done in preparing this report. Mr. Speaker, in seconding the appointment of Mr. Douglas Kanja